Okay, now we're going to look at flashing the example firmware onto the ESP Zigbee. So where I'm at right now is the official GitHub for the project, and we have two choices to flash this firmware. First, the firmware is actually under this folder here, so if you'd like to, you can build from source using ESP-IDF and flash it that way. A simpler option is if you scroll down to this flashing firmware section on the README, it's got a few links here, and this link here is Espressif's online flash tool. Now to use this, we can download 3 binaries that are also in the GitHub repository. So I'll click each of those links, and I'll press the download button here. Okay, now that we've downloaded those binaries, we're ready to use Espressif's online flash tool. So next we need to connect the ESP Zigbee to our computer, and we can just use the USB-C port here, just like so. And now for the USB-C power, it's okay for this switch to be off or on, doesn't make a difference. And now the next thing that we want to do is put the board into bootloader mode. If this is your first time flashing, this isn't really required, but after you've uploaded firmware, especially firmware that uses light or deep sleep, the native USB interface is also disabled when those sleep modes are used. So for a reliable way of connecting here, we'll enter bootloader mode, and to do that, we're going to press the boot button down, and then we're going to press and release the reset button. Now that has put our board into bootloader mode. So to connect to it, we'll just press this connect button here. It's going to be this USB JTAG serial debug unit. And we'll just press connect like so. Okay, now we're going to upload the 3 files that we just downloaded, and we're going to assign their flash address as listed here on the GitHub repository. So first we'll start with bootloader.bin, and we'll change that to address 0. Then we'll add the partition table, and that's going to be at 8000. And then the last one is just the ESP Zigbee.bin, and that goes here. Okay, so now after we've added all 3 binaries and put the correct flash address here, we can press the program button, and it'll show here in this interface down below, and we have successfully flashed the ESP Zigbee. Okay, now that we've flashed the firmware, we can go ahead and press the disconnect button here. Now, since the USB peripheral turns off when the device enters light sleep, serial consoles are going to be a little inconvenient to use with this example firmware. But to make sure that the firmware is doing something, we can go ahead and press the reset button here, and then we'll press button 0. And it looks like that turns on the LED there, so that's good. If we press it again, it shuts off. Okay, so next I want to show an example of integrating the ESP Zigbee into Home Assistant using Zigbee2MQTT. So what I've got here is a fresh install of Home Assistant, and I have downloaded 3 add-ons. So the Mosquito MQTT broker, the Studio Code server, this is just a nice way to edit and add files, and then the Zigbee2MQTT add-on. Okay, so I've already installed and started all of these add-ons. So if we go to Zigbee2MQTT, as you can see, we have no devices yet. So what we need to do first for Zigbee2MQTT is adding an external converter. And to do that, we can use the VS Code server, and sure, I'll trust the authors. And so in the Zigbee2MQTT folder, we need to make a new file, and I'm just going to call this one ESP Zigbee.js, so it's going to be a JavaScript file. And an example external converter is on the official GitHub under the integration folder. And so we've got this file here. And so we can just copy paste the entire contents of this. And so we'll copy that. We'll come back here and we'll paste it. And then we'll just press save. Now what this external converter does is it tells Zigbee2MQTT what type of clusters to be expecting on this device, and how to present that to the front end for Home Assistant. So after we've added the actual file, we need to tell Zigbee to MQTT that that file's there. So we can go to Settings, and then the External Converters, and we're going to add one here. So we'll just type the name of the file there, and press Enter. Then we'll have to restart Zigbee to MQTT. Okay. After restarting Zigbee to MQTT, now ready for the device to join the Zigbee network. So to do this, we'll go to the Devices tab so we can watch this live. And then I'm going to turn on the ESP Stickbee and press button 0 so we get the LED indicator. I'll press Permit Join on Zigbee to MQTT. Then we'll just watch this for a bit. Okay, so there we go. We've started interviewing. And we've successfully interviewed, so now we're doing the configuration. Okay, and now we have successfully configured. So the configuring, that basically just configures reporting for these attributes. Okay, now that we've joined the network, we can go ahead and adjust some of these reporting settings. One that I would suggest changing is the occupancy cluster and attribute. So I would like this to report every time the purse sensor changes. So to do that, I'm going to change the minimum interval to 1, the maximum interval to 0, and then leave this at 0, and I'll press Apply. So then we'll give this a second. And there we go, we got confirmation that we did change that reporting. Okay, now that I'm done configuring reporting, I want to go look at some of the other attributes. So if I go to Exposes, we can see the battery voltage, the temperature, humidity, illuminance, the purse sensor state, and then there's this off and on switch here. If I turn that on, that actually ties the third LED, labeled P, that ties that to the state of the purse sensor. So right now, the purse sensor is clear, so the LED's off. Then if I wave my hand in front of it, the LED turns on, and it's also updated here on occupied. And now if we wait a second, there we go, turns off, and then it's cleared here. Now additionally, if you have several of these devices and you need to identify just a single one, you can use this identify button here. So if I click that, that's going to toggle an LED. There we go. So you can use that if you have several of these and you need to just find a single one of them. This is a great way to distinguish between them. Okay, now I want to show an example of using the ESP Stickbee in an automation. So for example, what we're going to do here is make some motion activated lights. So right here on the left I have a Zigbee bulb, and we're going to go ahead and let that join the network. So I'll go ahead and press Permit Join and turn on the bulb. And it's a little bright there. Now we'll give that a second to join the network. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that is joining. Okay, there we go. We've successfully added the bulb into Home Assistant. So let's go ahead and rename these two devices. So I'm going to call this one Bulb 0. Then we'll go ahead and rename this one to ESP Stickbee 0. Okay, then we can disable join since everything's on the network that we want. Okay, and now I'm also going to go ahead and just turn this light off. So we'll press off there. Okay, so now let's go to Settings, and we'll go to Automations and Scenes. And then if I press Create Automation, then we can use the Motion Activated Light option here. So then we'll choose the occupancy entity from the ESP Stickbee. Then we'll choose our bulb that we just made. Then I'm going to change this down to 5 seconds just for testing. I'll press Save here, and we can just leave that how it is. Okay, now if we go back, so we can see that the automation is made and it's enabled. So now when I wave my hand over the purse sensor, it should turn on the bulb, and then if we wait 5 seconds, it should turn off. So Here's me waving my hand. The bulb turns on. If we wait, perfect. So there you go. That's a great example of using the ESP Zigbee for automations in Home Assistant.